speed on the line, right? But their capacity to sort of execute that, particularly that, you know, when to pull the trigger in that last 5-10 second build up so that they judge bow on the line at full speed to launch them and just get that 2 metre bow forward. That was sort of the small stuff that allowed them to then go.
Yeah,
and then they executed attackers by, you know, ridiculously fine marks, sometimes being waved through a bit fortuitously, and then they were like gone.
Yeah, we tried to start, because I just couldn't get off the line, and they just sort of ducked and popped. And it's sort of like, it's almost as though they both knew they were going to move that way, because they both went down at the same time and popped out. It wasn't tennis racing, but they'd obviously practiced so much together that the windward boat was confident to duck towards the leeward boat, because the leeward boat was ducking as well. And they popped the boat length, and that made a huge difference.
So it's sort of later style.
How long was the bow down?
Not long.
It's not recent. The fleet's doing it, and we do it a lot ourselves in a fleet. You just don't even notice it because, you know, some boats are doing it and some aren't. But yeah, it was a typical Laser style start move on the line. I've spent a lot of time. The other thing that they did is they regularly do rapid starts in club races or race to a windward mark. And the reason they do that is they're getting really used to sailing, you know, half of my length away from it on a very clear line to see who can hold that lane. That having sailing in very narrow lanes, and they reverse that along.
Talking about the end and pulling the trigger and all the fun stuff that gives you the glory, can you talk us through what's your 2 minute, or what are the milestones in the lead up to that, and what are the points that you're trying to get?
Yeah, we have a we have a routine that we go through from leaving the shore right up until the gun. So maybe, you know, we'll skip the stuff leaving the shore and getting numbers and all that kind of stuff, but maybe if we talk the last 5 minutes, because I think if people had a better 5 minute routine, they could get a bit more consistent with their starting. So we're pretty good with our strategy. Obviously, before 5 minutes, we kind of know roughly what we want to do, what sort of day it's going to be. So 5 minutes, obviously, we're trying to get time. Before that, maybe at 6 minutes, I'm sailing directly towards the boat with the pin in the background, and Tara's pulling compass bearings as I'm heading there. So I'm getting the line angle, and then I'm going head to wind, getting the angle of the line. So you add 90 degrees on, does that make sense? And then you can figure out how many degrees bias. So we've got our bias. At the same time as I'm luffing up, I'm getting a transit through the pin, so I know where I am on the line. So that's the first couple of things I do. And then we'll think about just making sure settings are all sweet. So sometimes if the breeze is going up or down range like it has this week, and suddenly it's gone up range, we might just do a 30-second upwind just to make sure I'm happy with the settings. Going pin, we're sailing to the pin, and if we're going boat, we're hanging around the boat. And then if we're going pin, like the other day, the first thing I did every single time was get a ley line into the pin. So does that make sense? Should I draw it? I'll quickly draw each of these things just for the people who might not know what I'm referring to. I've got a start line here and pin, a breeze. This is start line. So what I was talking about at first about getting the bias is I'm sailing directly towards the starting line on the same angle, and I'm just sighting through. I'm getting a compass bearing. And so the other day it was 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5, right? So add 90 degrees onto that. Tara? To get the landmark is going to give us 0.65. Sorry, 7.5. Yep, that's like Tara and boat. Right, so if the line was perfectly square to the wind, when I go head to wind here, my compass bearing will be 0.75. The other day it was actually more like 0.45, something like that. So we know 30 degrees bias for the pin, right? So when I actually went head to wind, the breeze wasn't like that, it was more like that. So I'm going head to wind like that. And that might be a little bit extreme. So then at that point I know I've got about 30 degrees bias to the pin. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, we're definitely not giving much of that bias away. We want to be pretty close down here. And particularly when our strategy as well, we thought there was going to be a left-hand track. I want to be down in this bottom third.
How long before the start do you determine the bias?
I'll do that at around 5. I might do another one at 2.5. If anything changes, if there's a big pressure line, I might do another one. Yeah, so staying agile with it.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing I spoke about is getting a transit. So you want to figure out where you are on the line. So again, you want to get your bow, this is your start line here. Look through here, and there's a house or a tree or something. So as you're approaching the line, you know where you are. If you're down here and you're looking through and there's a house up here, you know you're behind the line. Or if you're up here somewhere and you go, oh shit, the house is above it. No, I'm above the line. Does that make sense? That's the transit. So we tick those off. Sailing very slowly close haul towards the pin. And again, getting another sight through. So then I knew 2 minutes to go where I wanted to be setting up. So I was pretty close to pin boat, unless it was marked below me or.
It's always marked below.
So that's giving me a safe zone that I know I can't go that way. And maybe I'll bank a little bit and I might sort of approach from here. So I know roughly if, even if it does shift a little bit, I might just have a little bit in the bank. So we tick those off. 5 minutes, I'll have a good look at a scan. Make sure that there's nothing changing on the racetrack, that there's not a big right-hand shift or a big left-hand shift that we haven't thought about. We'll then lock in our strategy together. I'll talk to Tasar about reconfirm what we're going to be doing at the start. 1.5 minutes, we're basically final approach, unless I've stuffed up and run into the longs or something like that. So yeah, the other day we were about 1.5 minutes slow approach into the pin, or maybe a little bit up from the pin. A minute confirming sail settings. Anything else? No water in the boat. We're venturing down all the time when we start. So venturing up close. So I don't want any drag on that. Yeah.
What's the counting? I can always, we've been close to you. I can always hear Tara counting down, but it's not the time. It's something else. She's counting down.
That's the cricket. Cricket's still on cricket.
Why did you say 109?
I'll often, like, if he goes head to win, I'll give him a compass bearing so he knows.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, just where you are.
Just what the,
yeah.
What are you doing nearly on every start?
Yeah. Oh, it might
that's going to be
counting.
only 2 things I call, the time or the compass bearing.
Yeah.
Or like ankles.
Sometimes she gets the time off, right? So maybe,
Yeah, quite often it's not.
I used to.
I didn't think it was time or something.
Oh, so sometimes she'll call time, count, like say she's calling the last 10 seconds, and I'll count an acceleration time. So if she goes 10, 9, 8, I'll go 3, 2, 1, accelerate. Based on the position.
Boat lengths too long.
Something that I find really useful. And again, I stuffed up this week with Iggy. I don't look at the boat above me for when to accelerate. I look 3 above. When this boat's starting to move forward, if you're not going then it's too late. They're gonna end up rolling you. You want to be bow even and moving forward when the boat 2 or 3 above you is. If you're just waiting for this boat here, because they're reacting to the boat above them, by the time you go, too late. Yeah.
So James, time to all the techniques of accelerating and so forth all come down ultimately to the moment you start accelerating.
Yeah.
It comes down to how far off the line you are. I'm always struggling to be able to know how far off the line I am. So that was a general question, what techniques are you going to use to know how far off the line? Or are you just saying you don't worry too much about it and you just go with the next guy, the guy 3 boats up?
Yeah, we're doing a slow approach here. Like the other day I was pretty much pin boat and I had quite a few very close to me to windward. So I'm happy to be slowly moving forward and not losing any of that gap and then doing a slow wind up. Other times, in different situations, we just have to do a really aggressive, like what you guys were talking about with the Americans, where you want to accelerate in 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay, but the picking of the timing, how are you picking that time? Is that obviously how can you do it? It's a function of how far behind the line you are.
Yeah.
So knowing how far behind the line you are seems to me to be the number one skill Everything else has to fit into it.
Yeah, I think it's, to be honest, a lot of experience.
Judgment.
And before the regatta, the day before the practice race, we spent half an hour practicing that, on those yellow marks over there. And that's just, you know, and doing a slower
Just
approach.
looking at the starboard end, the pin end.
One practice easier,
Yeah.
but it's in the middle third where it's hard, is to do a few of the rehearsals using your transit that James was talking about, so there aren't as many boats around, and the skipper just has to get that mental sort of sense of where they are on this imaginary line that you can't see, using the transit by just sort of, you know, shaping in the middle of the line and getting a feel for, yeah, we're not on transit yet, we're not on transit, here it is, and then you just get a relative sense for where each end is. And if you do that 2 times, that at least gives you some sort of sense of, this feels like we're on the line, this feels like we're back from the line, and you've got the transit to, because generally, I mean, how often do you actually get the opportunity to see your transit in lots of the stars?
Consistently well with accelerating, and sometimes we pop and I was and then other times it took us a long time to wind up, and we were a boat length back when it was at 0. So something you definitely practice, and if you can get a sense of, okay, in 15 knots it's going to take me 5 to 7 seconds to get up to full speed, and I'm going to travel 2.5 boat lengths, whatever.
What's your techniques, Mark? You've probably done more starts than anyone here in dinghies. What are your techniques to judge that line position and get back right?
I'm trying not to get, I don't want to get forward too early. So if no one else is forward, I'm going to stand back as long as possible, give myself as much runway as possible. I think that's actually the key, is to not get too eager too forward. But sometimes people will take you forward.
Technique of just trying to hold a stationary position as close to the line as you can, and so you're actually in your position, using the skills to maintain it, and then just shoot the last boat length when you need to.
Yeah, we do heaps of that. Like, and again, we did a fair bit of that before the regatta, like trying to keep your bow as close to the mark, and practicing things like a double tap without moving forward. Trying to do, well, not without moving forward, with moving as little as possible, right?
Yeah.
Because having that skill, if you've got a gap to windward and you don't want, having the skill and the, you know, being comfortable to be able to go double tap up to them, there's a difference between a good start potentially and maybe getting rolled by that boat because you give them a nice gap to accelerate. So all that kind of stuff, if you just find a mark and just go and spend 20 minutes staying close to it, having a couple of practice accelerations like we say, doing a couple of double taps, seeing what happens when you back up and come out on the other tap and roll the boat around.
We've
all that kind of stuff.
We found that double tap. We found that double tap technique one of the real additions to our study, and some of the boat handling around. Do you want to talk to that, Chris? Because we practiced that a lot.
Yeah, I've got some questions sort of around crewing and the mast rotation, because I think that's something we haven't talked about at the start. I'd like to get Tara's view on that. But one of the things that we've probably picked up in the last maybe 12 months that we've got quite good at it, it's proved to be really powerful, is that double tap. So what it is the ability to be able to, maybe you've got a boat length and you have to practice with other boats as well, like not just on yourself, because you've got to know what sort of distance you can pull it off. But maybe you've got a boat length and a half gap above you and you're quite sloshful on. And the idea of being able to flop into attack and then flop back again almost immediately, almost a half tack we call it, because you're not really a complete tack. You don't swap hands or anything like that. And the key we've found has been the mast rotation. So when there's a traveller. So what we do is we go in and I'll say to people, there's half tack, and you'll rotate the mast, that will immediately get the leech to fill and sheet tension, and this roll right straight into attack. And then I'll be counting down how deep I want to go in attack. So 1 boat length, half a boat length, or something like that, and then we just flop straight back, and Pete's job is to move the jib through that process. And we want to heel, and you can do it up to about 15 knots really successfully and take that boat length gap out to do, but you have to get that mast rotated at the right time to be able to go through that tack.
As close as 30 seconds.
Got the same
and with the travel, which obviously was me asked the question of doing that, to see if we're different, but the traveller set and feed it on both sides, and so I know the final approach, and then I'll undo the portal. And I have the traveller car in the upwind setting on the starboard side, so it's slightly favored to the starboard tack where you're going to start, but it's always locked off, so if I do have to throw a tack, the traveller's clean. I only have to worry about the main sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got to remember to uninclude that wood one, don't you, in that last.
Cool. If you've got it set to where your normal higher setting and you do forget, but at least you can dump traveller, you just can't pull it up more. So if you have it set in the middle and you forget to uncleat, you can't pull the traveller up. But if you have it set to the higher setting, then you can at least dump traveller until that first tap.
So roughly, you want to start 5 head spacing with the traveller fix, and it's at the 3/4 position on the leeward sheet. So the leeward sheet basically go to 3/4, and that allows you to do a 4-head tap if you need to. And then the leeward one is set at your ideal travel position for the conditions, more up to 3/4. If you want it higher, you're going to do that after you start. So it's roughly pretty clean in the traveller. And then you just don't touch it for the whole restart.
Paying attention is we over-rotate the mast to make sure it definitely doesn't pop. So when you're doing that acceleration, does that make sense? Like you have it on a reach, so there's no way it can unrotate. We found that although it's not ideal for the way that we want the mast set up, we found that on the balance, a lot of the time it's better to have it over-rotated and know that you're going to have power, then go around the bottom mark, car goes a tonner, and then the rotator pops the window.
That's how we mark technique, not the start technique.
Not start.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I over-rotate it. So at 30 seconds to go is when I'll start putting my main settings on. So I'll pull the cutter and the bang to where they want to be, and that's when I'll over-rotate it at that stage. We're definitely on our final approach in 30 seconds.
In what wind strength do you go to? I assume this is in the upper range.
Basically, if I'm pulling the cutter on, I'll over-rotate.
So sort of 12 knots. Right.
So do you start with it over rotated, or when do you put it back?
That's the first attack.
So you leave it like that all the way up to the
Yeah, so we had it over-rotated. Well, the other day, pretty much to 4 legs, that's where we went.
and to make it.
Talking with it in between the fangs, not
Yeah.
all the way over,
Yeah.
like you're doing it in between the fangs.
That's so it doesn't pop out, right?
Yeah.
It's not because it's faster necessarily, it's just it's mechanically more secure.
It's the boat sail and not missing one, having memory quality.
Seem to go okay.
Most of the Americans, they're carrying up to 2 inches further back than what
The main ship, so what that's doing is it's putting forward thrust on the end of the boom at the gooseneck, and so when you rotate the mast, it stays locked in, same as when you pull the bang on to lock it in. Well, and again, we've looked at this, we did this down in the trade actually, Murray, and we looked at what's the effect of kind of main sheet on with that position back and at pre-bend, and then compared to bang, and it really didn't do nothing. I mean, it must at a very tiny amount, but not enough to
do that go, and that is where the clue we all have is where it's been put in the right place. What's happened is the location where the short would go, and that's been changed over about 5 years ago or 10 years ago sometime. And so therefore the boost should actually change. It hasn't been changed, it should have been changed. I'm working on getting the certification changed so we can move the sheet to the back. Because most people in the world, like the US and UK, already do their sheets further back.
Rotation mark by the main sheet position.
That's it. Yeah, so you can, so find that it'll just snap in when you put it in, and that stays on.
The last day got blown out, or was too light, or something happened, I can't remember. And John McKinney sat down and walked through all of his settings from the bow to the stern, and I just sat and wrote notes, and that was our base. And I actually read an article you guys wrote on the bus as well, about some settings that you guys. That was our sort of base when we bought the new boat. 54 here, which is right up in weight, and we know we're racing people that are 130, right? And your settings are going to be different. It's kind of about what you're trying to achieve with the settings. So I think getting that understanding of what does rig tension actually do to the jib, What does the sail profile of the main actually do? And if you want to put your bow down and you've got a baggy main, what sort of effect is that having in terms of drag and those sorts of things? For us, obviously in that upper range, we've got another gear, I'd say, that not a lot of people have, and I think it's being able to depower, plenty of border. We're fairly out on the jib track. Yesterday we were, I keep saying yesterday, the day before, we were either 2 or 3 on the jib track. We've got hole 0, 1, 2, 3. To get that slot as open up as possible for when I'm easing main. Main tension is critical. If you've got too much on, you can never get your bow down and get going. Just the boat just wants to bind up all the time. Heaps of cunner the other day. Like I think we were probably carrying. I looked at photos from Rob, and thanks Jenny for organising him to take them. And I was just looking at the different setups between the top few boats. And I think we had as much cunner on as anyone. She couldn't get any more on. I kept asking for more. Because the jib is actually quite round. So if you want to go fast, you need to find a way to flatten it, and that's rig tension. It's obviously bluff tension. And I think we carry more rig tension a lot of the time than the fleet. So
what are you on the list stage?
So so we've got 3 settings. So this whole regatta we've been at 21 all the way back, but we've got another setting above that which is more like 23, 24 all the way back, which we'd be on today. Above 18 knots, I'd say. Above 18 knots on average. So that 21 carries us from 18 down to about 8. And then we've got a lighter setting below that, which is maybe like 17 all the way back. Yeah, so that's...
Tidal what the Americans are running too. Although I wouldn't say that they're at the world standard necessarily for breeze, they're at world standard for the light range.
Yeah. Like there's been 1 or 2 times we've gone looser than that, like the last day of hailing when we knew it wasn't going to go above 5. We went looser. But the other thing that we're doing, that's your max tension, right? So that doesn't mean you have to sail upwind with, obviously, with that all the time. If we're looking for power, a really good way to find power is to go rig forward, and we'll go rig forward upwind. So we've got marks all along the track, so they're the same each side, or on the hull actually, next to the track. So that's a good way to look for power. So all you're doing is you're setting up a wind range, right, with that rig tension. So you're going, okay, I'm pretty sure today it's going to be 25 to 35 knots, so I need to get my max setting, and then the range is obviously forward to that. Or if it's going to be 5 to 10 knots, okay, what's my best setting so that I know that I can cover that, and if it actually gets to 12 knots, I'm not going to be screwed either. It's kind of just, yeah, sometimes in the lower breeze, we'd upwind, we'd be going, maybe like that far forward.
That's taking you effectively from your 21 to your 17.
Yeah. So like we have upwinds where the leeward shrouds are swinging in the breeze, like when it was really light.
Just as the rule the Americans are doing is everywhere up until they're starting to depower, they're always looking for the leeward shroud to be slightly slow. It's a rule of thumb because they want to minimise the compression on us, and also make sure that all the tension in the rig is carried through the tension. So when they start to get overpowered, they'll pull them back and start going for tight shrouds. But until that point, we're waiting for very slightly loose. So they'll just move the car forward just a little bit until the leeward shroud gets a little bit slow.
Chris?
3 settings as well. It was 12, 16, and 20. So they're
We're definitely using the same loose. So we never use
Didn't
those.
Tuesday, guys? Did you have it second off on the top?
Yeah, every day. Yeah, we haven't put it.
We occasionally thought about dropping it one, but
we never use the top or the 2 bottom. We either use that or that. But this is also a function of your mast rate, right? Yeah, and tack height, right? Because if you have more rate, right, then that's going to be less distance. So, and this was just a Jonathan McKee thing that I just heard him say. He said, we go here, and then it gets to, I think he said 15 knots, and then we go here, and that's all we do.
and that was echoed in Seattle, so that's exactly.
Yeah, we've got that sort of input all the time. Like, so it's
Probably that much or so touching.
yeah.
What's your tack height?
So we have a series of Dyneema loops so that you don't have to tie them each time. That then go through the inside tack height. I have to go and have a look tomorrow, but
The issue is
On the jig sheet, you added the whole 2 or 3, and that's for agrees, 2 days ago. And you have easing sheet from there as well.
jib sheet.
Yeah.
Occasionally,
So
like
it's
if
still
we get smacked by a big one, I'll go. I'll say hands on jib. And even though she's got her hands on the jib sheet the whole time, she knows that means ready. And it's only when I get smacked by a big one and I can't, use my force control of the traveller to keep it flat. But generally we will. You don't ever do it inside.
James, are you lifting your centreboard, or doing your centreboard?
Maybe 3 times, 4 times, because it has such a huge effect. The boards, as I think everyone knows, the board's too big in the Tasar probably. So in a day like, maybe not 2 days ago, but the days previous to that, where we're getting anything from 7 knots to 18 knots, you need to be changing it. So the other day when it was really breezy, we were maximum heights pretty much, so the tyre can still uncleat and clear the jib over the top of the board from the sheeting angle. And then maximum down is sort of down to there. And we've got marks all on it, so we've got probably about that far, we've got a line so that we can use that as a reference. The boat starts to feel bouncy and we're just moving, and I feel like it just wants to go, and that's when I know I found it through. It's mostly board. On the jib.
Go out and hold it.
Yeah.
You go out on the main sheet as well, you get more twist.
Yeah, a little bit. Further out. So I was in that breeze. I was probably an inch east on my setting from the other days. And again, that's my main sheet's all marked, so I know where I'm at. Changes with each mate, so you've got to spend some time before the regatta with the mate, making sure that it's right for that mate. Yeah.
You think about it, and we do the same, but 2 of the heaviest crews here sail with a lot of board up. That's how important it is. And so, just something to reflect on, if you don't have your board up a long way, you're going to be lighter than us, then that's where the first thing you should adjust upward.
But to be honest, I'm probably back to what Heather said before about, we do. I actually probably after the invitation race, I really grasped quite quickly that this was a sort of venue that you need to be on the edges, and if you get put in the middle, you get pretty punched pretty quickly. I think the best example I have of that is when Chris and Pete, we were probably around the 10th on the first upwind, around that mark in that sort of top 10 group. And they came across and they tacked 100 metres in front of me. We were sailing towards the top mark, and they tacked here, and we were back here, and we were right on lake. We then got some special pressure, that they didn't have, and we went like this, and ended up there on maybe the top arm, more like up here. So we took being on that edge and being the most left boat and having a little bit of luck as well, we were able to do it. And the boats that were anywhere below us never got up to it. So it's just that kind of venue where, and we saw it the same with the Navy boys that
so Rick and Daryl out the right.
That sometimes works, but
You're going out on jib car holes 2 to 3, like
we're not as far out as this guy. That's because of the jig there. You told me I should be further in.
more jib sheets.
We actually.
In the heavier stuff for our low mode, which we've had not so much here with other factors, but is keeping the jib car more inboard but easy sheet and being high on the blue board and getting a really deep, powerful third on the jib and just punching and just sending. And that's everything else the same. Board up, cutters on hard. Getting that main sheet right is critical. Retention. So that's also a set and forget. But getting the sort of the grunt drive and that bottom third of the jib in waves and low mode just we'll quit on that day in Seattle in that stuff, and that was quick. So there's a couple of different ways you can skin the cat, but I think so whether it's holes out and put on the jib car or easy sheet, same effect. You're opening the slot, but you might need a different shape.
So for The measurement's 41, 40 plus or minus 20 mils, so they're like 41, 54, 55. And I only do that because I don't want to get pinged when you measure it with spectral tape. The helm, the rakes are a good way of doing that. So we're maximum rate. And the other thing, there with when you're picking your washer size, because the other function is your deck counts, as you know. So that's picking the smallest washer to make sure that you're as close to that minimum as you can get it. Because again,
Thing from a glass point of view on the deck to house, don't cut the top of your mast off, bottom section of your mast. We went through the class a little while ago, and you'll get pinged on it if you go to world level. It's very easy to tell if someone's cut some of their bottom section of their mast, so don't use that as a way to get the deck to house. The washer is the way to do it. So that's just a
and especially number one for civil just for that. So if we're coming off the start line and we can be bow even, it's happened a few times with Hugh and Anna. So this week, not only coming off the start line but also going up the beach. And we can hold, and if we get a bit of a lift, hold the column, and then you get a little bit of a knock. And as soon as you get that knock and it's just got that extra thing, we just can't hold the height and the speed and of that sort of heavier weight crew. So I'm really interested. Peter's been talking about, Peter and Chris have been talking about that. I know even what we learned from Seattle, but it's probably not been light enough here to really use those.
I grew up sailing very high load all the time, sailing in Northridge, because if you sail low, you sail out of the gust often. And I really struggle to sail the low mode with Jimmy and Tasar. It doesn't feel comfortable for me, I don't like it, and I haven't learned to do it yet. Hopefully living on the lake now with more fresh breeze, I can train that. I sail high all the time, and it's just what I do, so that's number one, don't be above me. It's quick, we found that, and I found it different sort of modes at Cascade Locks where you've got the current taking you up. I mean, I learned a lot from the Americans there. The windy venue was to sail with a lot of main sheet tension and sail very, very high and just let the current take you. And it was natural for me, and we did pretty well at that venue, even though we were quite heavy, and a lot of the crews were lighter because it was a longer downwind sailing into the current. Our upwinds were good enough that we could hang in there. But very, very high mode. So that's just one setting to know the different people on the fleet around you.
So you're carrying on.
Jimmy, and that's why, and I don't go jib car out either. We just hike as hard as we can. Sometimes we've got a little bit more board down, and we've just got a higher mode that we can do. We've got to make sure that I'm always powered up, and that's why we go board down a little bit, so that we're always driving through. But we're never as flat as Jimmy and Tara, and we're always just squirreling up a little bit in each gust. And it's not comfortable necessarily, except that it's natural for me, having done it my whole
bit different, so it's whatever the boat feels on that day, I just keep adjusting till it feels.
We've been changing that so much lately, it's a bit of hit and miss, but when it works, you go, that's sweet, let's mark that and bottle it.
So you guys are talking about your high gears, your low gears. This week everybody got one gear, and that was 3 days ago. So we got right. You go right, yeah. But the boat was feeling good in that condition. As soon as the wind picked up, trying to set the new boat up with the new breeze, I just can't get the feel of it. But we're doing the same. We're out 2 holes, there's 2 down on the 2 blue board. Boards are about the same height as everyone else.
But what we were doing probably different for this from Port Stevens, which is the last one we sailed, much higher jib sheet tension and main sheet tension.
Yeah, more feet tension on.
So we have far more than usual.
Which is the rig is quicker to leave our effect patterns, right? So we're sailing flat. Because we'd love to reach, as you know, we'd love to reach around all the whole regatta. Obviously we're in many positions like this as well where we need to change our mode and go into a high mode. I think this week we've started to get a little bit better at it. So obviously the setup thing, getting cutter off, really trying to keep the boat flat, trying to keep away, focusing on particularly the gusty venue like this. As a helm, I'm focusing very, very hard on making sure that if we do get any squirt, any lift, that I'm going to be quicker to react to it and try and just dial up off the hip a little bit. But what you really want to achieve is this boat's going to win 9 out of 10 times, right? So you're trying to live here as long as you can. So you don't want to fall here because then you're really stuck. What you want to kind of learn how to do is to go like this. And just go backwards.
Slower.
Little slower, a little higher. And then once you're back here and you're a couple of boat lengths back, you've still got clean air, and they're not in a leave out position, so they're not actually putting bad air onto yourself. So that's really what your goal is. So that's what it meant was that when it did go left, we tacked the wheel. So we went around a bottom mark, and it was quite windy and quite choppy. You're going through the waves and breaking all the waves with your hull. I sat just off the stern, and you towed me for about 100 metres. And even though I was getting really affected by your breeze, I was basically going downhill the whole time and just sitting on your wave. If you can do that on a fast, really fast upwind boat in 20 knots, you can just sit there and barely hiking and getting a tow, and you won't fall down.
Of it, and it might get us into a situation where more boats get closer to a line with control, a bit like the US have been doing, and that's understanding your rotation lever and its ability to accelerate you or decelerate you as you're coming in towards the line. And if you leave it fully rotated, and in some cases the locked-in mode, as we were talking about earlier, one notched in, the boat will continue to move forward in most cases. And if that's the case and you're getting ahead of the other boats around you and you don't want to be ahead of them early, unrotate. It just stops that auto acceleration and gives you the ability to slow yourselves down. And that just stops some people creeping forward and forcing the whole fleet forward and driving you into the black flag starts.
Because by that stage I want to depower, and the way the rig's set up and with the very dynamic top half of the rig, that also helps flattening out the top of the sail as well. So,
But I think in light wind, it wouldn't pop.
no, you have a lot of trouble if you get that tension in light wind. Yeah. So I'm pretty uniform in that intention.
Guys, I love to overlay the mark. You come blasting into the top mark, you're going to go on the first breach, right? And you're fully juiced up and you're getting carded. What are the priorities in the depowering or trying to set the boat up for reach like jib tracks out? Right, so you just do that.
Don't touch any settings, just all crew weight out, height it, and just
go down in pressure.
And just live with what you've got. You don't worry about setup.
Keep the keel, don't you?
Yeah.
Probably the key one would be mast rotation in the reaching position.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. In what order that's become priorities.
Get that one because that can reverse pop out on a reach if you don't lock it in. So you kind of got to get that one. But if it's those two screaming reaches we had the other day, we didn't touch anything while we were fully hiked other than the mast. And then when there was a chance in a lull or a bear away, then it's cunners. Yes, jib car out, and it's board up, and then outfall out. They're all small compared to just hiking hard.
Yeah. And it was getting a bit jib. That's all you're worrying about. Forget about everything else. Just simplify waves. And then that allows me to worry about all the waves and everything because she's helping me sail the boat. Like I was the one that was further back. She didn't actually come back as far, but she was just hiking the boat flat. I get back more. Again, being heavy, I lift the bow up, but then I had the power and the boat being flat to work with after that. She just wasn't worried about it. She'd already done the rotator, of course, on the reach. But it was just those two things that allowed me all the opportunity to do everything else.
And both crew in the back straps. Move the weight right.
Because that's like, for me looking at that's like 50, 100 metres right there. That's more than what we're talking about with a bit of rig turn.
That's right.
It's in the notes, what we found is for that power reaching, it's all about, the bangers, maybe you can take a little bit of slop out of it occasionally in lumpy conditions, but in like real power reaching, it's drop your travel order as low as you can, but still able to work the main sheet. And we've tried, handing the main sheet to Pete as well to be able to keep tension on for longer, but I've found that hasn't really helped because steering and the like is more important. But it's all just about getting your travel as low as you can while still being able to hold the main sheet.
What about from the other guys? What are you doing?
So I've run quite a lot of main sheet tension, and then Adam just brings a little bit of bang on to stop the rotator popping, and that's our setting for the reach. So we don't adjust it on well, quite a lot. And what we found is being heavier, if we got too much off, we dump too much power, so now that's a little bit different. But we got that about 5 or 6 years ago, paying a little bit more bang than others before. And then we do that somewhat when you go out of that little power reach, we go to the border reach, we have to let some off.
the leech to be flicking a little bit, fanning a little bit. Don't want it to be fully open and too twisted, in my opinion, and certainly don't want it to be rigid. So you kind of try and find that sweet spot where it's fanning.
Can you say that a bit loudly, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's right. So what we
So before on the tight, really greasy reaches is heaps and heaps of water. To really just let the boat slide, or not slide around, but play around heaps. And both on the back strap, like get the bow out of the water, it's just big and you don't want that
Fat playing sections after monetize it, so use it.
Before, you want, if you're both hiking and your Cunningham's not perfect, who cares? Keep going. Wait for that opportunity to go down and get the sail set up.
And then that's it after that. And I've already got board up if it's windy, so it's only getting more board up. So the priority is if everyone else, if you go around that top mark and everyone else goes in and plays and stuff, and you just take off, then you'll go straight over the top of them or gap them, and then you've got more space to play around with and fix those things one at a time. And that's we haven't sailed a lot, and that's why the simplified manner, because we're not doing it fast enough to do all those little things right, so we had to simplify it down because we were losing out by trying to play with the settings too much.
You don't really need the pole. Well, my background's mostly in lasers, so I think people will probably see a lot of that technique kind of coming through. And I think people in the Tasar, I've noticed, think that their jib is probably doing more than it is a lot of the time. But actually, if you're surfing waves and getting deep on waves, that's where we often make quite big gains, is getting real deep on waves and opening a gap to the boats above us. I think quite dynamic weight fore and aft is something I really focus on, particularly being, me, I'm like 90 kilos, so I'm a big effect of where I'm sitting. So if I'm not planing downwind, I'm forward of the fort. Once I'm surfing.
You're forward downwind.
Yeah.
I'm the same.
And then to the extreme, which I don't think anyone else did, in that last race the other day, we had a real big squirt at the top mark, and I got Tara behind the fort with me. So she was behind the main sheet squad. Hey?
Otherwise the nose can go down.
Yeah, because we were going so quick and we were going down big waves, and I didn't feel we were at risk of falling off the plane, so she came back for 30 seconds or so and then meandered on back up to the front afterwards. So yeah, they're very responsive to fore and aft trim. They don't like being, they don't like being thrown around quite as aggressively like as a laser, and Hugh and I have a very different technique, but probably a similar downwind boat speed, where Hugh's very, very smooth and steady, and I'm a little bit more dynamic. But we probably get there at about the same time, so I don't know, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I tried, I grew up sailing lasers as well, and really tried to sail hard, and I worked out I was spending a lot of energy doing that more dynamic sailing and not going any faster. And it's hard enough energy-wise to sail upwind and downwind, upwind in the reaches, that I figured I'd just conserve a bit more energy because I'm getting older and not as fit as I used to be on the downwinds, and just really focused on sailing it smooth on those downwinds. And a little similar, I'd always try to get low, not as aggressively as James does. But here, we're talking a lot about upwind and banging the corners upwind in this venue, not being in the middle. There's a number of downwinds I've sailed hotter out to the corner and gained a lot of boats, because I've been kind of behind, which doesn't help. But gained a lot of boats just banging the corner, sailing higher, staying in the breeze, and all those little screw-ups we're getting upwind, getting all them downwind, and just sailing. A lot of boats been falling in the middle of the course, suffering because you're getting wind from all the other boats behind you, but you're also sailing into those lighter patches in the middle of the course. So I think it's knowing when to go low and when to go high. James and Tara have had a couple of times where they've been out front up lead, which they could sail low and take that advantage. For being back in the pack a little bit, I took the edges a little bit more.
How you down there, I don't know if anyone else does that. Match up the force. So the forestay, once the rig's loaded up, right, the forestay goes all slack. But then you've got your jib banged on for your upwind setting. So we try and match it so it kind of looks good. I think that helps for power.
So it's a jib.
Hey?
Helps the jibs.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how, I haven't seen, or maybe everyone does it, yeah.
Before, I think it's going to happens. So again, upwind, I spent a lot of time in Anna, hiking just before the gust hits, not after the gust hit, because then you've already heeled over. So you count the gust in by 3, 2, 1, you're hiking on 2, so that you're fully hiked as the gust hits. And it's the same with my wave downwind. I try to move just before I think I'm going to need to move. And that enables me to be in the right spot and not spend too much time in the wrong spot.
All the time, but sometimes I'll pull her weight in and out to generate leeward or windward heel relative to the wave I'm trying to catch or whatever. So, and that's just, we've just done a lot of like practice of that.
That little gap. I don't move a whole lot far enough unless it's
And what's the one done, or is it
sitting on the back. Yeah. Yeah. Like
you
up
don't
there.
get the main sheet wrapped around your back or something?
No, you just sit against the main sheet. If you want to be back a little bit, and then a bit further forward. And as Stu was saying, I start a bit smoother, so I don't get Anna to move it out at all. I get her to stay stationary, and now I can sail the boat, because I'm not sailing as dynamic as James, I'm sailing smoother. So I find we haven't trained as much. If you get two people trying to move, you get out of sequencing. It's like being on a seesaw, you can't get the balance right. So that I'm able to sail it smoother if it's just me moving.
Yeah.